Doc Severson here for the ReadySetCrypto Premium Newsletter Market Update for Sunday, October 21st. All right, let's not beat a dead horse. We're seeing the same type of price action yet again today, where we have essentially no movement in many of the major coins. They are just consolidating within a wedge or whatever consolidation pattern that you want to call it. Doesn't really matter right now, is that we're getting, if we go out to like the Chapman Bollingers, we're seeing large amount of energy, especially at the larger time frames. So larger time frames, with the exception of Ethereum in this case, since we're exhausted to the downside, but pretty much across the board, we're seeing these big energy levels with a lot of these big coins, a lot of these big energy levels just sitting there winding up, consolidating, waiting for their time to start to move. Across the board, again, on these weekly charts, we're seeing big energy levels. Range contraction like this leads to range expansion. These will move soon. When? I don't know. But this is why we have to frame in the price action to know when it is moving and which direction it is going. So this is where we set the alerts for these. Now, some of these are perhaps starting to break out a little bit. Like this one is Stellar Lumens, and we've got, let's get some of these fibs off of here so we can see this just a little bit better. But we're starting to see this, you know, again, just coiling up in a larger time frame pennant, and this will move in a big way at some point soon. Look at the energy on this thing. So we just have a massive amount of energy. Which way is it going to move? Don't know. This is why we need to understand where the price pivots are, so that if we see a price break out above a certain level, that we know that it's confirming the upside. Otherwise, if we see it peak out here and form a lower high and then a lower low, what level that would represent that shows that this is evacuating the pattern to the downside. Now, I've talked about this before, and even though there is some hope that we could see these prices break to the upside strongly, I'd almost like to see the opposite happen. Bear with me for a minute here. And I know I've brought this up before, but I want to get this into your consciousness that this is a good thing. What you have to do is you always have to be asking yourself, which way does the price have to move on this specific asset to basically screw the greatest number of people that are involved in trading that asset? And that's the way it will move. And for this asset, what I would say is that people are getting hopeful, people are getting optimistic about price breaking out of this asset. And I could say this for just about any of the top 20 coins. And instead, what would happen if the price actually went to the downside? Massive disappointment, wouldn't it? It would be massive disappointment. And all of a sudden, you'd see just a large-scale capitulation, I do believe, of people saying, all right, that's it. I can't take this any longer. We've gone through the whole last 10 months in a bear market. I can't do this any longer. I've got pressure at home. I've got investments to make. You know, I've got to get going. My student loans are coming due, those kind of things. People have only a certain amount of patience for these things. And when it is pushed, everybody's got their cup. Everybody's got their cup of hodl that they've got out there, right? So let's imagine that you've got your cup of hodl and you're going to hold as much as you can. But when it starts to form a meniscus up at the top and actually starts to dribble down the sides, you've reached the limit of what you can hold. And this is what bear markets are so good at doing. They are so good at, and it's not one person that's up there controlling it like a puppeteer. It is what people do to themselves collectively that causes markets to move like this. So this is why I'm always looking for that one magic move that represents the screams of thousands and thousands of people out there, you know, all of a sudden being completely vanquished, right? And then what happens is usually it will go in the opposite direction. That's why I want to see it do this, because when price does this type of capitulation out of here, when it goes in the opposite direction in the way that everybody expects to see it go, and I've seen this happen so many times, this is the magic pattern here, is that it actually breaks to the downside. It surprises people. They get sick, tired, they capitulate, they sell out, and then boom. That's where the new bull market gets spawned from. So meanwhile, what do we do with this market? If it's not moving, if we have to poke it to see if it's still alive, what do we do with this thing? Well, what we can do is Would it surprise you to understand that if we go down to a much smaller time frame, that we can actually see all kinds of trends and all kinds of stuff moving around? Aha. So we can take swings with this. Now, if we're just trading the spot markets, in other words, if we're just trading the organic coins, we generally want to be sticking to long only. I don't want you guys out there shorting the spot currencies for all kinds of reasons. It's just not a good thing to do unless you're very, very experienced with this, know how to manage risk. So if you zoom in on this chart in your microscope, you're going to see these massive, massive moves, right? So it's all a matter of perspective. We're used to a perspective of maybe at the weekly and the daily charts, and we don't see the movement at all. But when we zoom in, all of a sudden we get a much different perspective. Those of you that have seen the movie Men in Black understand that a galaxy can be hanging around a cat's necklace. Well, at least in the movie it was. So what we're doing is we're going out to our screener and we're finding coins that are actually moving. Now, finding coins that are actually moving in a nice swing pattern. So we've got a few of these now. Let's go over to the charts and look at some of these here. So we have Metaverse. And this one actually did break out, failed to break out, is back down here, but it's still holding value pretty well. We'll see if we can, since we set that up with a fixed risk position, no harm in holding on to it a little longer. Chainlink is one of these that has actually started to move in a very positive direction now. So we have a former downtrend working its way into a primary uptrend. Now this really still hasn't taken out any weekly targets yet, so this may just roll over again. But this is the sort of thing that we can trade. We can trade within here. When we identify something that's starting to head higher and it's starting to do so in a quiet and trending format, then we can get on board and look for those high energy values and look for the breakout and take that breakout. So a couple of these, Genesis Vision has been really good lately. This one's really looked very nice. So one of the questions that I get all the time is like, well, how do I know where to take profits? If we're swing trading like this, how do I know how to take profits for this? So normally we will have at least, we're not going to find one of these until it starts to trend higher, in which case we'll have some examples of the swing moves. So what I can do is I can, let's pull something like a yellow, and I'm going to measure this swing here. And we're going to take it from the top down to about where the breakout level was. Okay. And let's make this thing, let's set it up so it's like super fat yellow. Okay. So there we go. And quite honestly, this is how I do it. We want to compare this versus the other swing length. So here was the breakout. This one actually went a little further than that. Let's see if we can move this guy out of the way. And this one went a little further. So we can say that the average swing is maybe just a little bit better than that. Right? But if we were taking this swing, if we measured it off of this first swing, and if we took this swing here, we would have sold into this level, which is about 0.0205 versus BTC. And that would have gotten us a profit, and it would have avoided us from holding on to this thing as the price came back down into the pattern. Or we could have taken the second exit up here. But this is what's called an average swing length. Average swing length. So what you're doing is, as you identify the breakout from a particular coin, we can identify that and just kind of set up our expected move. This is not a statistical expected move. This is basically just based on the average of previous moves. And we would say our target is going to be up here at about 0.002495 or so. Somewhere in that area that we would set up our limit order to get out of this trade if we had taken it long. So let's go down to our screener. Let's see if there's anything else that's showing up right now. We're going to, again, just go to the overview. We're going to go to change percentage. Not much is moving today. And some of these are already on our list, like Aeron is already on our list, and it's consolidating. It needs a little bit more time. Basic attention token. This is relatively new because it is now popped above the 200-day moving average. So this is a new one for us. Let's take a closer look at this so you can see that this coin has been in generally a downtrend and is starting to move higher. This is still a lower high in the weekly chart. So if we go out to the weekly chart, we can see that this is not really And we're going to have to move this one back until we get rid of that candle off the back there. Okay, there we go. So you can see that this pop here is just the beginning of a swing up, but it's still a lower high setting up. So until it gets above this level up here in this area here, this is where I'm just going to assume that this is going to roll over at some point. So the object is to get in, get your fair share, get out as soon as possible. Okay, looking through this list, it's like we're seeing the usual suspects down here, like Chainlink, and there's 0x, which is actually negative for right now. So 0x is not really doing anything. Let's go over to the daily chart. And this actually is doing a little bit better. This is actually on our primary. This is on our primary portfolio list. So we will look to perhaps enter a 0x position as we get up to a better level of energy. And you can see some of this. Now, this will not be a swing trade. This will just be an entry into our portfolio for a 2% percentage of 0x. But let's look at this one on the weekly chart as well, too. And, you know, there's just not that much history with these. And like many other coins, they have the pump and dump that we have to get rid of first off that first candle off of the ICO before we can get some decent data that shows us what's actually happening. So this looks like just a consolidation pattern on the weekly chart, just kind of moving around, but we can play within the swings, and this is probably not a bad level. If it does show propensity to trend to the higher, we can take our initial position into 0x. Guys, that's all I have for this weekend. We have to match. You can't trade the market that you want. You got to trade the market that's in front of you. And right now, the market that's in front of us is not moving around much. So what we have to do is to narrow our field of focus to find those little swings that are moving around and stay sharp. And let's see if we can get that break, that movement out of that consolidation range. And it should happen soon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here on Monday.